Yesterday, the Supreme Court rejected an appeal without comment from a privacy rights group which argued that a secret federal court was wrong in authorizing the government to accumulate electronic records. So do you understand what that means? The NSA spying, which is incredibly vast, there's about 1,000 programs that do it. They're collecting everybody's information, all of our metadata, no matter what you do electronically, it is being tracked, it is being stored. And somebody sued and said, we need to put a stop to this. This is wildly unconstitutional. The Supreme Court rejected it without comment. They casually brushed it aside. Like, yeah, some people say this is spying. Other people say, I don't give a shit. Get it out of here. This is why I posed the question before the break. The Supreme Court, are they all idiots? Is the Supreme Court packed with idiots? That's my question. If you go based off of this, it's hard to conclude anything else. So let me recap this for you about this particular spying issue. First, we learned that the government was collecting the metadata of all Verizon customers. You remember that? It wasn't that long ago. Over 100 million people had all of their information stored by the government. We heard that, everybody was outraged. Then we learned about the PRISM program. More stuff was being collected. The Blarney program, more stuff was being collected. And then the X-Keyscore program, which is arguably the big daddy of them all, or as it's called, the XKS program. And what do all of these programs do? Very simply, they collect all of the information on you for everything you do. Phone calls, emails, text messages, you name it, they track it. They track everything, they store everything. Why do you think they're building this? What is it, a 1 million square foot thing in the middle of Utah? And they're putting this gargantuan supercomputer in there? Because they want to store absolutely everything. It's like we're living in the Orwell book, 1984. On July 20th, the government even came out and admitted that what they were doing was unconstitutional. They said, quote, "The Director of National Intelligence, who oversees the nation's intelligence agencies, admits in a letter to Senator Ron Wyden that on at least one occasion the FISA court found that the minimization procedures used by the government while conducting surveillance under FISA was unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment." So the Director of National Intelligence said at one point, yeah, I guess you can kind of make the case, and it's totally true that we are violating people's right to privacy and protection from unreasonable search and seizure. Then we learned that the government came out and said, our rationale for the spying, don't worry, it's cool because it's totally legal. Under Section 215 of the Patriot Act, if you go read it, it authorizes this kind of stuff. And that actually settled the mainstream media. That's when the mainstream media said, well, the government says it's legal, I guess it's legal. Let's move on to something else. Let's talk about Kim Kardashian's ass. So while the mainstream media was silent at that point, everybody, in new media was still losing it because the person who was the author of Section 215 of the Patriot Act, Representative Sensenbrenner, came out and said, yeah, that's not true, they're lying. You're not allowed to do all of that spying under the provision. I should know, I wrote the provision. That was not the intention of it. But that got little to no press. In fact, as far as I know, it was only in print press. I was the only one who actually talked about it. And now, knowing all of that, okay, all that information, here is the text of the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. So I pose it to you. Does spying on everyone, everywhere, violate that? I think the answer is relatively clear. I mean, when you think of Grandma Bethany down the street cooking an apple pie and watching reruns of Murder, She Wrote on a daily basis, how can you make the argument that she is part of a terrorism investigation when there's no probable cause on her, there's no warrant on her? And then they make the argument, well, it's a broad warrant, it applies to everybody. But it shouldn't be a broad warrant. And as the Fourth Amendment lays out, it needs to be a specific warrant for something specific. That is not specific. The grandma should not be spied on. The construction worker should not be spied on. The accountant should not be spied on. The doctor should not be spied on. I mean, 99.999% of the American people should not be spied on, and there's no reason to spy on them. They're law-abiding good citizens that have done nothing wrong. But you're saying that, oh, it's all to fight terrorism. We need to look at everybody's information, including Brad Pitt and, I don't know, Dave Chappelle. No, none of those people should be spied on. That should be clear. And it's certainly unconstitutional. It's certainly illegal. And for the Supreme Court to brush this aside and not even comment on it, it shows me that they are full of idiots.